Hi, it's Fred. I got a 2018 Desert Sled. I've turned it into my adventure bike, and I have two previous videos. One done before I left on the Colorado BDR, and one during. So I kind of showed my bike before, but I've made some upgrades to my skid plate that I wanted to show you all because protection on these bikes in the dirt is one of the main problems. It's an awesome adventure bike. I had giant loop luggage and carried all my camping stuff, and it did really good. And what I did was I bought a skid plate from BJ Engineering. It's the company in Riverside, California that did the Fast House bike for the Mint 400. They won the Hooligan class. So they made a skid plate. Skid plate was really good, but I didn't like the mountings. The mountings both attached to the subframe, the trellis. I don't know what you call that part of the frame, but same place at the SW Motec, upper crash bars, and the Hepco and Becker bottom crash bars attached too. And I always wondered why, if they could only make those two crash bars work together, it would help. But anyway, this year I did that, and I want to show you that. So the SW Motec are the upper crash bars, and the Hepco and Becker, I put the bottom on there. I ended up seeing another guy that had one, and I was looking at it because I had the upper bars only, and I thought this can be modified to fit both, and I just finished that. I'm going to do a couple of videos once I get the skid plate on, but what I had to do, if you can see, if you're familiar, or you can see, the SW Motecs have, the uppers have a flange that goes against the subframe, and then the Hepco and Becker bottom crash bars have this tab that the bolt runs through. So what I did was I cut off this bolt, this tab, or this tubing here that the bolt goes through was a lot longer, so I cut that off and I ground it all the way down just before the weld to make this smaller, to get them a little tighter against, so the front of the crash bar would match up. So that's that. It actually fits. There's a little space there, not too bad at all. And then I'll show you what the one problem I did have is you need to shorten those bottoms up, the front, and all they have is this plastic kind of junky little tab in here, which I'm not too happy about, but I couldn't really find anything without welding to bring those together, but I think it'll be fine. It's got the plastic tab. If water gets in there, hopefully it'll find its way out and not create any rust, but I'm slightly concerned about that, and I wish I would have done that a little different, but maybe another time. And then the BJ Engineering from Riverside, they made this skid plate, and I'll show you the skid plate in a moment, but they made these tabs that come off the two engine supports, and then there's one on the other side I'll show you in a second. And then they had these, the skid plate basically bolts right to here, and it's an aluminum skid plate. They wanted to keep the temperature cool since it's an air-cooled bike, and have the heat dissipate, so that's why they made alloy. Unfortunately, they made these brackets alloy, which I think steel obviously would be a lot stronger, but I will say that I went to Colorado last year and took a lot of rocks on the skid plate, and these didn't flex or move at all. But I am going to put a piece of steel across, that'll be in the next segment, and tie those together to have a little more strength, and also then I will bolt the skid plate directly up towards that, and it'll be a little easier getting on and off, plus it'll give a little more strength. And then at the front, like I said, they had the skid plate, I'll show you in a minute. They had these tabs that came up and bolted in right here, and they were alloy tabs. They were really cheesy, plus they kind of kept you from putting these crash bars on, so I cut those off. I had some actual struts with Heim joints holding it on last year, and it held up pretty good. It just looked kind of janky. So in a minute, I'm going to fabricate that cross piece and then get it lifted up there. I'm going to do a couple traditional U-bolts through here and here, and I am going to have to notch out the skid plate where this bar is. So in the next segment I will show you that. Again, there's two different videos on Par's Place that show the other modifications I've done to this bike, so I won't go into that here, but you can see that other tab from BJ Engineering for their skid plate goes on right here below the brake pedal and bolts into the motor mount there, and that tab comes down here. So that's that. I think it's actually going to work out pretty darn good. We'll see. This is phase one. Next I got to build that plate that ties those two tabs in together, and then get my skid plate up there and see how that matches up. So I'll do another video here in hopefully an hour or so. Okay, so phase two, as you hopefully can see, this these two brackets that came with my skid plate from BJ Engineering Riverside, one is on that side and one is on the right side here, and it was just really challenging to get screws and nuts up there to put the skid plate on, because the skid plate attached directly to those. So I put in this steel plate here. These are alloy from the company, which I don't really like, but they seem to be pretty strong so far. I put a steel plate here, and then I double nutted a couple bolts, so I have two nylon nuts. Once you get the skid plate on, those go on and fit pretty nicely on there. So the nuts are exposed, but the bolts are protected with the nut, and you can always get the nut off if you're bashing it on rocks, etc. So that's that plate. It makes it, it's going to make it real easy to take off this bolt, or this nut, drop the plate, along with the U-bolts on the front, which I will show you next, to change oil filter and make access or whatever you got to do. So, and then this is the two front crash bars. I showed you this previously. I'm just going to wrap some water sealant tape around there and try to keep most of the water out of there, but I'm basically going to put U-bolts here, or a U-bolt here and a U-bolt here, through my skid plate. I had to notch out the skid plate that I bought here and here to fit around those lower crash bars, and then I'm basically going to U-bolt through a couple holes. So when I have to drop it to do maintenance and oil changes, a nut, two nuts, it'll be pretty easy to drop off compared to how it was before, and I'll have some good coverage. So anyway, I'll show you that here shortly. Alright, I got the skid plate on there. This is like the last final step. I think it's looking pretty good. So again, if you're looking at mounting the two bars, the SW Motec and Hepco and Becker upper and lower crash bars, I think that's very doable for everybody. Just have to do some modification and cut that lower bar a little shorter, and then get the threaded steel, stainless steel rod. It's double threaded, it goes all the way through. I already showed that. What's unique to this build is this skid plate I got from BJ Engineering in Riverside. I keep mentioning them, but that's who made this plate. Again, I like the plate. The mounting wasn't great, so this is what I configured. If you're going to do this and then try to modify some other skid plate, you would have to, I'll show you here in a second how I attached to the lower Hepco and Becker crash bars, and I think that'll work universally. What I did get from BJ Engineering are these attachments here, and you saw that earlier. So if you didn't want to go with that split skid plate, you could go with, you know, really any skid plate or make your own. You just have to find a way to attach it somewhere in the back. There's a couple bolts you can get to, and you can make some kind of a rear mounting for it. What I did with mine and how I attached it to the stock bars is I used just a standard U-bolt, and then I cut little half-inch alloy square tubing, and that's what kind of keeps it away from my exhaust pipe, and then kind of gives strength to that U-bolt and gives a little separation that I needed with this plate specifically. So anyway, that's that. I will show you. The one other thing about this skid plate is, I think I might have already mentioned it, it does cut out airflow a little bit, so you have to be careful about that. I thought about drilling some holes, but I haven't done that yet. I don't know if I will or not. It was on there last year when I did my 4,000 mile trip, and as you know, there's no temperature gauge on this, just a dummy light, but I didn't ever feel like I got too warm, more so than normal. And then this is the other, I kind of came out the side. The way this skid plate is engineered, I had to come out the side with the U-bolt, but I used the same 1/2 inch square tubing, and it holds it nicely away from my pipe. It is a very well designed as far as how it tucks all the way around the motor. It is alloy, so it dissipates heat, and like I said, really the big negative, or one of the negatives to this skid plate, is it doesn't have that many ventilation holes, which I may change. So that's it. Hepco and Becker are the lower crossbars. You can see the other end of that double, or that threaded stainless steel rod that I put through. SW Motec. I think it's going to be really good. And we are getting ready for Wyoming backcountry discovery route in about 6 weeks. I will be doing videos every day on that and give updates on not just the trip but the bike as well. And anyway, I hope this was useful. I remember when I first got this bike trying to find skid plates, and there's not much out there, so this was my solution. So anyway, take care, have fun, good luck.